Very good evening to everyone. My name's Ed Nichols, and I've been talking over the weeks about our Here and Now service. This is a listening service so that if anyone feels they need to talk themselves out, get some things off their chest, then we provide this Here and Now service. And the now means that we can set up an opportunity for you to talk quickly and immediately, rather than having to wait. So if we can help you with that, then we're here to do that. And basically you can contact me in the first instance on either telephone 0191 460 4567, and if I'm here, I will fix up something with you. If I'm not, leave me a message and a contact detail and I'll get back to you. You can contact me on email, ed.nichols, Nichols, @live.com. If you prefer to email, and then I can message you and fix up a way of communicating with you, perhaps even by email. If you prefer something more face-to-face, like Zoom time or WhatsApp, then we can fix that up. But the important thing to know is that if you need to talk desperately, if you need to really talk yourself out rather than just put up with it, then this service is for you, and we would be very glad to listen to you compassionately and to let you do the vast majority of the talking. So if that can help you, then we're here to do that. I don't know if you saw the news tonight, but it was really rather sad. It said, for example, that last year this time there were 2.6 million people who either felt isolated, on their own, lonely, always, or most of the time. Now that's a lot of people in England, isn't it? 2.6 million. But since the lockdown and this pandemic, that figure now at this time of the year is 4.2 million people. That's a lot of people who feel either isolated, alone, lonely, for most of the time, for some of the time, or always. Now, that's something I think that should affect all of our hearts in our communities, certainly here in the Northeast, but throughout the country. It's a very, very difficult thing, and one of the things apparently that it does when you're on your own and you're feeling lonely and isolated and can't make contact with people, or people don't make contact with you, what we often feel is that the issues that we have that are unresolved, that they cannot be resolved. And so any hang-ups we have, any mental health issues we have, they seem to escalate, they seem to come to the forefront. So it's not just the isolation itself, it's how it affects us. So if we feel bad about ourselves, low self-esteem, then that comes to the forefront. And I just want to encourage you tonight not to let that happen. And I just want to show you some images, if I may. Have a look at these graphics. Here is an image of a young woman who's isolated at home, looking out of the window longingly for company. And probably when you look at this young woman, you wouldn't think she's got any loneliness problems, but she does. And look at this picture here. This is of a student in a hall of residence, and a lot of students are isolated. Perhaps they've just begun uni, perhaps they've not made the friends yet that they would have made normally under normal circumstances. And there they are, and they're sitting at a desk, perhaps thinking, oh, I've got to study as well. I feel lonely on my own. And so again, students can feel that, and apparently a lot of students do. And if you look at this one here, this picture here, you'll see again just this woman looking out of her window. Can you see that? She's a middle-aged woman by the looks of things, and she's looking out the window. And looking out the window is often a sign of our loneliness. We're kind of trying to to look outside the door, outside the box, outside the prison that we sometimes feel that we're in. And this is happening to a lot of people, and it's very sad. But I want to encourage you tonight that if you feel like any of the people in these graphics, that you're not alone, that there are people who care about you. I really want to get that home. There are, we can believe a lot of things that are absolute lies, that nobody cares about us. When people do care, perhaps they're not showing it, but it doesn't mean they don't care. They just have to be given a prod to care more. And we have to learn as a community to take better care of each other. But that doesn't mean that you're not cared for, and we just need to get better at it. Look at this next graphic here. And you'll see here in this one, basically that this is a rather elderly woman. She's got a cup of tea in her hand, a mug of tea. But again, she's looking out of the window. And I don't know what's going on in her mind. Perhaps some of you who are like her do know exactly what's going on in her mind. Perhaps she's a widow, I don't know. Perhaps she's thinking, I wish Fred was still around. He's not. I mean, we'd have had a conversation. We might have had a game of cards or something. But she's on her own, and she's looking out the window. It's a real sign of our loneliness, that. Look at this next graphic. And of course, what we often forget is that isolation often entails the isolation of people who've got COVID symptoms and are feeling pretty wretched. And some of them are isolated at home because they don't want to go into hospitals. There's a real fear, isn't there, these days about going into hospital. And so here is a middle-aged man, and he's sitting on the sofa there. He's on his own. He's got his phone out. Sometimes that's the only thing we can do. But even our phone sometimes doesn't link us up with people who want to talk to us. So here's this guy here feeling isolated. And look at this one here. Here's a very much older man. And again, he's got the COVID symptoms. Basically, he's at home and he's got his mask on, which when you've got the COVID symptoms actually is not necessary, particularly when you're isolated on your home. But he's got it on. Perhaps he's just being hyper cautious. Perhaps he's thinking, well, I'm going to do everything possible so I don't die with this thing. People get isolated and they think these things. When you're on your own, you can think, of death and things like this. I want to encourage you tonight that whatever situation you're in, that there are people who care about you and who will listen to you if you give them the chance. There are. And we're going to encourage people around you tonight as well to care more. I need to care more. We all need to care more than we do. Particularly in these unprecedented days of COVID, we all need to put ourselves out, to inconvenience ourselves much more than we do. Particularly when people feel isolated and vulnerable, alone, lonely, and needing to talk. So I just want to encourage you in that. And here's a picture too. Do isolation is a form of darkness. It's a form of mental and psychological darkness. Here's a young man actually in the darkness. I don't know why, whether he's just put the lights out or whether it suits his mood or whether he can't afford to put any money in the meter. I don't know, but he's a young guy. A lot of young people can get themselves very early in their life in these situations of loneliness, of needing really quite desperately to talk. And I want to encourage you, if you're a young person in that situation, indeed whatever your age is, that you will realize that listen, there are people who care about you. And I hope to talk about that more before this little session ends. Here's another picture, a final picture. And this is of an older man. And can you see he's in bed in the darkness? And it seems his only contact with anything, is the phone. And basically, again, it doesn't matter what the age is. And sometimes isolation keeps people in bed. They think, well, what's the point of there's nothing to get up for. I'm just going to stay put. I'm not even going to put the lights on. And and all of that, staying in bed, staying in the darkness, basically it can really compound your isolation so you feel even more wretched and hopeless. Now I want to speak tonight not about hopelessness but about hope. about expecting good. And I want to speak to all of us, including myself, about this. We need to care more for each other. I want us to think about the people we know in our streets, our neighbours, whether we know them very much or not. Perhaps we don't know them that well. Perhaps they could live or die and we wouldn't even know it. We need to be more neighbourly. We need to look out for people. And basically, I don't think anybody will object if you contacted them and said, you know, I'm your neighbour from a few doors down. I don't think you know me very well, but you know, my name is Jack and I haven't seen you for a while. I just wondered if you're doing okay. I don't think they're going to say, you know, anything bad about that. I think they're going to appreciate the call. Neighbourliness can begin in this situation where people are locked down and isolated in a way that perhaps it would have been more difficult to do when we weren't. So I want to encourage us all of us, listen to me, looking at the people in our streets, even if we don't know them, to be looking at our friends, to look at our elderly relatives, to look at our relatives of all ages, perhaps students, young people. You know, we assume, don't we, oh, they're young people, so they'll just bounce back. Well, you know, many of them don't just bounce back. And if they've got other underlying health issues, they certainly don't bounce back. They just get isolated and start thinking, you know, if they've got low self-esteem, they think worse of themselves. If they have, you know, trouble with, you know, things that have happened to them, any form of abuse of any kind, you know, whether at home or school or wherever, they can, in the isolation, these issues come right to the forefront of their thinking and affect their emotions, and they can feel worthless and useless and what's the point? But you see, we have to care, and I want to say to you, young people are under a lot of pressure we older people were never under when we were their age. I think all teenagers have some kind of pressure. To be this and to be that and to be the other, but basically I think there's more pressure on today's young people than ever before. So we who are a bit older, a bit more mature, let's bother, let's make sure that they are okay. Obviously we cannot contact them if we have no familiarity with them. But even if we're just to say, to young people in the street, making a phone call or whatever, it's just me, I'm just a few doors down for you, I haven't seen you for a while, are you keeping okay? Just something cheerful, it's not weird. Some people are frightened these days, we're all frightened to do anything that's called direct action because we think, oh, well, they might think we're weird. Let's not think about that people are going to think that we're weird. Perhaps they think, what a nice thing to do, what a thoughtful thing to do. You see, as long as we have suspicion and fear, we can never be a community together who listen to each other and speak to each other. And we've all such a lot to learn. I'm 77 and I have such a lot to learn. Don't think I'm here telling you how to do it because I'm perfect in it. Far from perfect. I'm learning it and learning it more and more. And sometimes I really blow it. And don't listen. And all I was really needed to do was to listen, but I reacted and blew it. But that's just life, and we've got to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and get on and do a better job next time. I want to really encourage us to lift up that telephone, to find the contact details for somebody, send them an email, send them a telephone, have a telephone conversation with them. They're all around us. Tell them that, basically, have you got everything you need? Is there anything you need? Most of the time, lonely people have got everything they need materially, not always. And basically, all I would say to you is that, all we really need to be concerned about most of the time is not their material things, but their emotional things, their mental health condition. I want to encourage us all. It's easy to pick up a phone, isn't it? So easy. Whether it's a landline phone, whether it is your smartphone, whatever it is. Send an email, send a card. Perhaps if just send a bunch of flowers round. Just something that makes the contact. So that we together can learn to break the isolation, the loneliness in our neighbourhoods, in our streets, in our families, amongst our friendships. And let's not just presume everybody is okay. Let's not just presume that. Let's take the trouble to find out if that is true. Often it's not true. People are not doing very wonderfully. And when you do phone them, they'll say, yeah, I really needed that conversation. And I don't mean that we get into some morbid conversation. You know, it's just having, you know, perhaps a cheerful spirit. Perhaps, you know, just to, if you can cause the person on the other end of the line to smile or to laugh, then that really is good. Because laughter does good like a medicine. A merry heart does good like a medicine. It's just like you give them a tonic, and you are the tonic. Your words are the tonic. I want us to all to really be much more conscious of those who are isolated. I don't know about you, I'm getting a bit sick of hearing about how wonderful communities used to be in the good old days when we all had nothing. Well, okay, if that was the way it was, then I'm thankful that it was that way. But listen, we live in 2020, and we don't want to be looking back at history to see how things were good. We want to make things good now in our generation at this time. So can I really encourage you to do something? Do you know, and in our general, can I just say to you, in our general walking about the town, you know, I know some elderly people who just call into the activity centre and they just want to say hello, that's all. And somebody to say hello back. That's honestly the truth. They're on their own. They're walking the streets of Dunstan. I've seen them, I've met them. And it makes a difference if you make some time for them. You know, if they're walking, you don't have to, you know, we're all, you know, sort of isolated from each other, but you can call across the road to them. Hello there. You know, if they've got their dog out, you know, say lovely dog or whatever. You don't need me to teach you how to socialise. All I'm really trying to do is encourage you to do it. I believe we can all do it. We can bring a lot of healing into our community by just being these proactive kind of people who care. Let's not talk about, you know, and mourn the fact, you know, that, people don't care enough. You know, I don't know about you, I don't want to get into all those negatives, because if I get into those negatives, it just makes me hypercritical of others. And often when I'm criticising others, what I don't realise is I'm actually criticising myself. The real message is I don't care enough. So I don't need to be criticising other people for not caring enough. I don't care enough. I don't bother enough about neighbours, friends, relatives. I want to encourage us all in these. And as I say, just once again, don't think that I'm sort of telling you what to do as though I'm perfect in it. I'm not. I'm learning it. But we need to learn it. And these are the days that can pull our community together better than ever before. You know, even better in COVID situations than before COVID. We can really lift things up. Let's lift up our young people. Let's be sensitive to our children as well in our families. Let's be sensitive. Let's see what's going on. Sometimes we don't even bother to find out what's going on. Let's talk. Let's let them talk. Let us become good listeners, really good listeners. And then we're going to see this wonderful miracle of healing our communities, of making our communities the kind of place, the kind of environments where we all feel, you know what it is, I sometimes get lonely, but there are people here who care. I know people care here, and so they help me to get out of my loneliness and to stop thinking morbid thoughts. That's a really mature community. And may we in the northeast of England, always in the past famed for its wonderful community spirit, may we have that community spirit again. Now, how does it happen? Not by words, not by my words, by action. By action, by putting the kind of things I'm suggesting and the kind of things you're probably thinking of which are better than what I'm suggesting, putting them into action, doing something, giving people an opportunity to talk and to be compassionately listened to. It takes patience. You know, if some people haven't spoken for a long time, they will want to do all the talking. It's sometimes taking me a long time to learn just that simple thing. Lonely people need to do all of the talking, so that means that I need to be a lot more patient as a listener than I have been. We have to learn the skills. How do you learn all this? You just do it. And you learn as you do it. That's how you learn. You don't learn from a textbook at home. You learn by doing it with real people. Can I encourage you very kindly, as one who's learning himself, let's start becoming good listeners and giving people around us, particularly those that we suspect are not doing too well or are isolated, to give them the opportunity to do an awful lot of talking. Perhaps if they're not used to talking, we need to coax them to talk. Tell me a little bit more about that. That must have been awful for you. Tell me a bit more about that. Did you know that there are old people who lose their voice because they haven't used their voice to talk for quite a long time? Isn't that really a sad fact that they've lost their voice because they've not used their vocal cords, their vocal muscles, and therefore they've lost their voice. It's been months since they've spoken to anyone. Let's join together, all of us. Pick up the phone, send the email, send the cards, send the flowers, say hello. Make every effort to provide opportunities for people isolated to feel cared for people who are alone and needing desperately to talk, to give them those opportunities to talk. And if we pick up the phone, let's not think, oh, I'm going to give them a 2-minute thing. How are you? And they say, fine, and we'll put the phone down. That isn't a conversation. We've got to try to bring people out. We've got to try to listen long and not be impatient to get off the phone. Because when you give your time to a person, and I give my time to a person, we're giving them something of ourselves, something of our life. And that is the best thing that we can give to each other. Something of ourselves. I want to encourage us all to do that. And I want to thank you so much for listening to these things. And let us work together so that by the time, we come to leaving planet Earth, and I hope it's not for a long time incidentally, that we will leave a community healed, caring for itself, relating well, in which isolation and loneliness has been fully dealt with and is a thing in the past. Thank you for your time. Good night.